Haley. This is Kathleen Hobbs. I am a SPED teacher here at DeSoto Central High School. Haley asked me to share some opinions about the 14th Amendment and how it affects individuals with disabilities. I'm here with my dog, Jax. He's sweet. But I just kind of wanted to go over some things with you, and hopefully this will help you out on your essay. Just first off, the 14th Amendment, for those who don't know, it says all persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. I'm really visual, so here's my little sign. So that was the 14th Amendment. Okay, I think that was backwards. Anyway, the 14th Amendment in basic terms is protecting everyone who is a United States citizen and their rights. This is a really unique thing because if you think about it, there are tons of a variety of different people with different backgrounds, with different ability levels, who are United States citizen, and this amendment protects them. It also gives them a really unique option that they might not get in any other country. So I'm really proud to be a U.S. citizen and live in a place that does allow this. For individuals with disabilities, this really comes into play in a couple of different areas. First off, we're talking about education. As a teacher, it is so important to let parents know of my kids what their students' rights are, what their rights are as a family. A lot of times I get kids in high school who still haven't applied for SSI, or they haven't contacted their local Department of Mental Health. And even though they are eligible with disabilities for education, you have to go through a whole nother section with our government called the Department of Mental Health in order to be certified for services through that. So it's really important that everyone's educated on it. For education, the 14th Amendment hits us kind of under this umbrella is something called IDEA. It's Individuals Disability Educational Act. And it's really how special education came about. Basically what IDEA says is that every student in America is allowed to receive a free and appropriate public education, and that we as in the United States will never deny someone that. That's a really amazing thing for education, because back in the 70s, 80s, and even the 90s, when my brother was in school, that wasn't guaranteed to them. So this is something that's come around in the late 90s and now in the 2000s, where they've adapted it several times to ensure that kids can get this education. It is only for public schools right now. I'm hoping that that will continue over as we see a big push for charter schools coming now, that will happen. But as education, that means that in my classroom, if a student needs an assistive technology device, I had a student who couldn't talk because of their injury. They had a C4 vertebrae fracture, and so they couldn't function anything except for their neck and their head, and he didn't have control of his voice. And so he used a voice output device where he actually uses a sensor on his headband that points to a computer where he can talk through that system. Because my student didn't have any cognitive disability, he had a physical disability. So his brain was great. He was on grade level. He is very capable and probably will end up getting his GED. But because of his physical disabilities, he couldn't really be in a gen ed setting. So what we did was put him in self-contained. We taught him at his level, and we gave him the tools he needed to succeed at his highest ability possible. And that's our aim for every student, whether they're inclusion and just need a little help, a little tutoring on reading skills and getting a little extra time on test in a small group setting, or if it's someone who's as severe as one of our low ones who's only really learning on a pre-K level. um, we're able, because of the 14th Amendment and IDEA, we're able to meet those students where their need is. And that's a really unique thing for us today, because it hasn't always been that way. Moving on to the other section Haleigh wanted me to touch on was voting. This is something that's a little touchy for a lot of people. I kind of want to explain why. Um, Voting, some people believe that if you're not cognitively able, or if you have any kind of a mental illness, you are not capable of thought, and that you should not make a decision for voting just because you were born in the U.S. and that you're 18. So, with the 14th Amendment, this protects people's rights as individuals being able to vote. Now, I will say, not everybody does this. Not every individual is going to seek that out, whether they have a mental illness or a disability or are perfectly capable and willing. We have a big problem with people registering for voting, so that's a whole nother story. But something is unique that is being talked a lot about in Congress right now is that individuals who do the transfer of rights, it's something under IDEA and the 14th Amendment, that if a student is SCD, that stands for significant cognitively delayed. If they have that, they're not really capable of making decisions for themselves and having pure cognitive thought and being able to speak for themselves. And we have parents who do this, they sign over their rights. So what they'll do is they'll go to a lawyer, and the lawyer will fill out the paperwork and stuff, but it's basically a way to protect these individuals in saying that they could not medically make a decision for themselves if something were to happen and they, like, say one of my students broke their leg in a car wreck. Well, if my student is over 18 and he is scared of a doctor, he can deny the best medical option for him. He could say, I don't want the surgery, and unless that parent, before the student turned 18, has had the transfer of rights paperwork done, that doctor cannot perform any medical procedure on that individual. So it can be a really big issue for kids who can speak a little but really aren't thinking through their decision. It can be a big issue for their protection. Well, where people are trying to go now with this for voting is that if they've transferred their rights as an individual for education or for medical issues and things like that, then they've transferred their right to vote. And that's not correct. And as of now, they're still protected under 14th Amendment, saying they do have the right to vote. And I feel very strongly for that. But I also can see the other side of this argument that if they can't make a pure, clean thought process, maybe we are questioning, are they qualified to make that good vote? And even further, should there be some kind of test that everyone has to pass before getting the right to vote? It's just a big question in the air right now, and it's really interesting, the conversations that are going on. So look into that if you haven't. And then just a little bit more, the last thing you kind of asked me to talk about is today versus the past in special education. Originally, many years ago, it was even saw that kids who came out with birth defects, or even something is even a physical birth defect like a club foot, those students or those children were were basically killed, and um, their parents, with the understanding, is they didn't have a chance at life and they wouldn't make it. A lot of that has to do with the medical side of things. There was no way of treatment, there was no way to help those kids out, that kind of thing. Um, and luckily, with the growth of medical and with the growth of just our community in general, um, we have been able to make exceptions to those thoughts. And so people are able to live with disabilities now, and it's not something. Some disabilities don't even bother you at all. Um, I have a couple of examples for you. So I have two brothers as well. They both have disabilities. I have my our middle brother Chris. He has dyslexia, and this is actually a disability that affects your ability to read. A lot of times you see the letters turn backwards or upside down, and when you write you misspell a lot of things because you just can't make that transfer from hand to eye a lot of times in the cognitive process. So with that, he really struggled. He needed tests to be read aloud to him. He needed extra time on tests a lot. And those accommodations went all the way through college, even through 2 master's degree. Chris is now an art teacher with his master's in education and his master's of fine arts. And he would have never, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and even mid 70s, he would have never been given the chance to go past high school because accommodations, those were seen as like, they were seen as cheating. If I read you your test, I'm cheating and giving you a level up on someone else. And if you can't read, then you can't learn. That was the mindset back then. And so luckily we've seen a huge turnaround on that, and the fact that we want every person to reach their highest level possible, and we're going to use every tool out there that we can to keep a level playing field, but also accommodate you at your needs. And that's what's so cool about the individual education program that we designed for every student who's eligible for special education services. We write an IEP every single year that hits every individual at what they need. Not a big circle under their disability needs, but their personal needs. And so that's something that's really changed a lot in the mindset of special education. On the other end of the spectrum, I have another brother. He's my oldest brother. His name is Will, and he is precious to my heart. He was born with a cleft lip and palate, which means he was born without the top roof of his mouth. And when he was between the ages of birth through around 3 years old, he was having several surgeries because back then they used metal plates to build that bone structure and things like that. And he actually caught viral meningitis while he was in the hospital. And because of that, the fever, all the effects that happened, he had a humongous problem with his brain functioning. And it impacted his processing ability. It impacted his speech terribly. It actually took some of his hearing away. And so Will had to kind of restart on life. And he's very capable of learning, but it takes him a lot longer. Back then, the label for him, when he went into school, he is 38 now, so he went into school in the early 80s. They labeled him as mentally retarded, which is, it's a horrible term that we all consider, oh, you can't say that term anymore, it's considered offensive and things like that. But that was the terminology that was used. And it wasn't meant as a diss or anything, it's just how they described them. Now, if he was diagnosed, same issue that was going on, we would use the term until he's into 3rd grade as developmentally delayed. And basically, that's giving us the time to really evaluate him, really get to know what his needs are, where his disability lies specifically, so that we can meet him better at where he needs services. So that's a whole different thing. Back then, they didn't have hope for Will. They were going to stick him in this room, and he wasn't going to get much of a chance at anything other than just participation at school. Luckily, I have two amazing parents who are both educators. My mom taught kindergarten for almost 26 years, and my dad is finishing up his last year in public schools before he retires in May, and he has 26 as well. And he teaches 8th grade science. So both of them were very proactive with Will, and they were on top of things, pushing as hard as they could. And even with all of that support, Will, because of the terminology that was then, he wasn't allowed to be in gen ed classes all the way through. He had to be in a self-contained room, even though cognitively he could actually handle some of the work, to the point that we now know that Will is high enough where he has taken and passed his GED. He's participated in a couple of community college classes that he was really interested in. And that would have never happened if he was born 10 years earlier. It's just the way our society is becoming. We're becoming a lot more accepting of people who are different. And that's so important for us, because that's what our nation's founded on, is that you can come from any background. You can come from any way of life, any disability, anything, and still have the promise of equal opportunity. I won't go on to a big soapbox about that, but it is really amazing how the community really does reach out. There's more opportunities for supportive employment. Now you see people with disabilities not coming out of high school and just ending up in facilities where they sit and do nothing all day, and they're just accommodated and said, oh, he's just a happy person, he'll be fine, and really have no sense or value of life. To now we have companies like Kroger, who is especially known in DeSoto County for hiring individuals with disabilities post high school. And yes, they get a little tax write off from it, but they're able to provide a safe working environment where people can actually feel valuable. They can feel like they're offering something to the community. And that's really, really important. And this is all because they're protected by the 14th Amendment. So, overall, the 14th Amendment is amazing. It really has done so much for this part of our society, and it's something that we really have to fight for. Especially in today's conversations, people get a little feisty about it, but um, every individual deserves the right to their life and to be able to live it the way they want to, as long as they're safe, as long as they're protected, and as long as they are contributing. I don't see that anyone could ever deny them anything. Anyway, I hope this helps you. I hope you get some quotes or whatever you need for this essay, and I hope the best for you. And if you have any questions, just stop by C12 and come see me. All right, thanks, Haleigh. Bye.